Welcome to Loving Wisdom. I'm Benjamin, and today we're exploring a profound topic that touches each of our lives in deeply personal ways: the importance of honoring our ancestors. This journey into our lineage isn't just about respecting those who came before us. It's about understanding ourselves more fully through the lens of our heritage. Let's begin this exploration together with open hearts and minds. Many of us go through life carrying an invisible weight, the unconscious rejection of our ancestral heritage. This rejection doesn't happen without reason. Often, it emerges from the painful awareness that our ancestors may have committed acts we find difficult to reconcile with our own values: violence, hatred, or betrayal directed at others, or even within the family itself. These shadows from the past reach us through whispered family stories, through unexplained tensions at holiday gatherings, or through the subtle expressions of fear and pain we observe in our parents, grandparents, or other relatives. The unspoken histories linger in the spaces between conversations. Sometimes our rejection comes not from knowing too much about our ancestors, but from prejudice about what they represent. We may feel ashamed of our nationality, embarrassed by our family's social class, or disconnected from our racial or cultural identity. This shame becomes a barrier between us and a significant part of who we are. When we reject our origins, we create a fracture within ourselves. This internal division manifests as identity confusion, unexplained guilt, or a persistent feeling of not belonging anywhere. We may find ourselves drawn to completely different cultures or lifestyles, unconsciously attempting to escape the perceived limitations of our heritage. Yet this rejection, while seemingly protective, ultimately leaves us rootless and disconnected from the very foundation that could provide stability and meaning in our lives. Our ancestral rejection becomes self-rejection in disguise, creating conflicts within that no external success can fully resolve. When we work on our relationship with our ancestors, we often discover that many of our struggles aren't random or entirely our own. They're inherited patterns. These unresolved ancestral issues manifest in our lives as self-sabotaging behaviors that mystify us as because their origins lie outside our conscious awareness. Consider how unconscious loyalties shape our lives. If your grandmother lived through extreme poverty and never overcame her financial struggles, you might find yourself inexplicably sabotaging opportunities for wealth or advancement. Part of you may believe that becoming successful would somehow betray her experience or separate you from her legacy. This invisible loyalty keeps you bound to patterns that aren't serving your highest good. Financial patterns are just one example. Relationship difficulties often reflect ancestral wounds as well. The person who can never seem to maintain a healthy partnership might be unconsciously mirroring a parent's unresolved heartbreak or the dynamic between their grandparents. Without awareness, they're doomed to replay these scenarios, wondering why happiness remains elusive. Health issues, career blocks, and even how we parent our children can all be influenced by these hidden loyalties. We might resist healing because illness connected us to a beloved family member. We might avoid leadership roles because our ancestors were persecuted when they stood out. These unspoken commitments operate beneath the surface of our awareness, yet they powerfully direct our choices and behaviors. The most insidious aspect of these patterns is that they feel normal to us. They're simply the water we've always swum in. Until we recognize them as inherited rather than intrinsic to who we are, we remain captive to cycles that don't belong to us and don't reflect our true potential. Here's the profound truth I've come to understand through my own journey. When we reject our ancestors, we're actually rejecting essential parts of ourselves. This rejection creates a fracture within our identity that can manifest as internal conflict, self-doubt, and even self-loathing. Whether we acknowledge it or not, we are shaped by our origins. The very fabric of our being, from our physical features to our temperament, from our innate talents to our deepest fears, carries the imprint of those who came before us. Their stories flow through our veins. Their voices whisper in our thoughts. Their habits emerge in our instinctive reactions. When we deny this connection, we create an internal war between who we truly are and who we believe we should be. We exhaust ourselves trying to sever ties that are fundamentally unseverable. It's like trying to reject our own shadow. The more forcefully we push it away, the more persistently it follows. The path to genuine self-acceptance begins with exploring our family history with curious, compassionate eyes. As we investigate the patterns, beliefs, and experiences that shaped our ancestors, we gain profound insights into ourselves. Those inexplicable fears, those recurring dreams, those instinctive reactions that seem to arise from nowhere. They begin to make sense within the context of our lineage. This understanding doesn't trap us in determinism. Rather, it liberates us. When we recognize the ancestral origins of our patterns, we can finally distinguish between what is truly our authentic nature and what we've inherited. Only then can we make conscious choices about which aspects of our inheritance to honor and which patterns to compassionately release. When we look at the actions of our ancestors that may trouble us, it's essential to view them through a lens of compassion rather than judgment. They lived in different times, with different values and vastly different resources than we have today. The information available to them, the societal pressures they faced, and the traumas they endured all shaped their decisions in ways we may never fully comprehend. Consider for a moment the limited knowledge they had about psychology, emotional health, or even basic communication skills. Many of our grandparents and great-grandparents were raised in environments where emotions were rarely discussed, where vulnerability was seen as weakness, and where survival often took precedence over emotional well-being. If your ancestor was harsh, perhaps they believed strictness was the only way to prepare their children for a difficult world. If they were distant, perhaps they never experienced nurturing themselves and simply didn't know how to provide it. If they made choices that caused harm, they likely did so from their own place of wounding, acting out patterns they themselves had inherited. This doesn't excuse harmful behavior, but understanding the context helps us relate to their humanity rather than reducing them to villains in our personal narratives. They, like us, were complex beings doing their best with the tools they had available. When we connect with the humanity of our ancestors, their struggles, their limitations, their hopes, we begin to see them as whole people rather than just the sum of their mistakes. In their frailties and imperfections, we might even recognize reflections of our own. This recognition creates space for compassion, not just for them, but for ourselves as well. No matter what our ancestors did or didn't do, one truth remains constant. Their existence, their choices, and their journey led directly to our own lives. This simple fact deserves our deepest gratitude. Without them, without every single decision they made, both wise and unwise, we would not be here today. Take a moment now to reflect on this profound reality. Each ancestor, through their unique path, contributed to the miracle of your existence. Every hardship they endured, every challenge they overcame, every relationship they formed, all of it culminated in you being here, now, in this precise moment. I invite you to pause and say, either silently or aloud, "Thank you. Thank you for your struggles, your resilience, and everything you endured that led to me. Your experiences flow through me, embedded in my very DNA. They have shaped who I am, both in the patterns I'm learning to release and in the strengths I carry forward." From this place of acknowledgement and gratitude, we gain the freedom to consciously choose our inheritance. We can select which aspects of our ancestral legacy to honor and continue, and which patterns we're ready to transform. You might consider creating your own ritual of acknowledgement by saying, "I honor you, and I gratefully receive the wisdom, strength, and resilience you developed through your lives. With love and respect, I leave with you the pain, trauma, and burdens that no longer serve either of us. I ask for your blessing to forge my own path, to live with the dignity, joy, and love that perhaps you wished for but couldn't fully realize. I commit to living a life of purpose and fulfillment, not despite your struggles, but because of them, honoring the precious gift of life you've passed down to me." This practice isn't just about healing your relationship with those who came before. It's about reclaiming the wholeness of your own story and freeing yourself to write the next chapters with intention and love. As we begin to honor our ancestors rather than reject them, a remarkable transformation occurs. The energy we once spent distancing ourselves from our roots can now flow toward embracing our complete identity. This shift, from ancestral rejection to acknowledgement, mirrors our journey from self-rejection to self-love. When we deny our lineage, we unconsciously fragment ourselves. We create internal divisions between the parts we accept and the parts we disown. But healing comes when we recognize that every aspect of our heritage, however complicated, contributes to our wholeness. Imagine for a moment that you could see your entire ancestral lineage physically standing behind you. Visualize generations stretching back through time. Hundreds, even thousands of individuals whose lives, choices, and circumstances converged precisely to create you. Feel their presence as a force of support rather than a burden to escape. These ancestors aren't just genetic contributors, but wisdom keepers. Within their collective experience lies every human emotion, challenge, triumph, and lesson. They've navigated war and peace, abundance and scarcity, love and heartbreak. This accumulated wisdom doesn't disappear. It lives in you, accessible when you're willing to claim it. Even those ancestors whose actions you find difficult to accept offer valuable teachings. Their mistakes and limitations show you what needed healing in your lineage, healing that you now have the opportunity to provide. By acknowledging their humanity and choosing different paths, you become the answer to prayers they may not have known how to articulate. When we embrace our full ancestral story, we experience a profound homecoming to ourselves. We no longer need to hide, pretend, or disown parts of who we are. Instead, we can stand firmly in the present while drawing strength from our roots, creating a life that honors both where we've come from and where we're going. Before we end today's exploration, I want to remind you that we have several guided meditations available on our channel specifically designed to help you connect with your ancestral wisdom. In particular, our ancestral healing meditation offers a beautiful space to practice the principles we've discussed today, allowing you to experience that profound connection in a supported way. Remember that this work of honoring our ancestors isn't just theoretical, it's deeply practical. As you move through your week, notice the moments when you feel resistance toward aspects of your heritage. These are precisely the opportunities for integration and healing. Even small acknowledgments can begin to shift the relationship with your lineage in powerful ways. I encourage you to revisit this practice regularly, as ancestral healing isn't a destination but an ongoing journey of discovery and integration. Each time you open yourself to this connection, you'll likely uncover new layers of understanding and strength. If you've enjoyed this content, subscribe to continue exploring this loving wisdom. Until next time, shine high and tall.